All right, welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pusher podcast. It's a little bit later in the week than we usually record, but that just means we have had more time to digest everything that has gone down at the Monaco Grand Prix, and we're here to talk all about it. Brandon, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I think it was a great race weekend. Like I've said before, I love Monaco, and it truly did not disappoint this year. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I'm excited as well. It really was a great race weekend. I'm going to say the weekend as the whole because I think that is the joy of Monaco, is that the weekend as a whole is the spectacle. Obviously, we're in the glitz and glamour of Monaco. It is one of the most spectacular places that Formula One races, but also it's the most important qualifying of the year. So there's more drama on Saturday than there is all year long. Even FP3, you're like, if someone crashes here, they might not make it to qualifying. So the Monaco weekend as a whole truly is something special.
It really is, and it was a great weekend.
Right, we've got lots to talk about, so let's jump right into it. What is your one sentence rundown from this weekend?
My one sentence rundown is I love Monaco. I truly enjoy watching the race, and this weekend's race provided some drama at the beginning, which was fun to watch, fun to see play out. That kind of changed things for the rest of the race, but it was still very interesting, and I enjoy watching cars go around the streets of Monaco. And Saturday's qualifying I thought was fantastic. And I've said this before on the podcast, but I truly love watching drivers do well in their home race. And for Charles Leclerc, Monaco is the home race of all home races. I mean, he grew up and drove and rode the school bus on the streets that he's now racing on, which is so cool. And for him to do so well across the entire weekend was just really fun to watch. So
yeah, Charles sure did great this weekend. He was on the pace from FP1, and I said, this is the year he's going to do it, and he did it. That was awesome to watch. I think that flows right into my one sentence rundown, which is going to be almost the exact opposite, because I know you love Monaco, but there are so many Formula One fans who have been watching this sport maybe for a year because of Drive to Survive, and that's awesome. Welcome to the most lovely sport in the world. We're so glad you're a fan. But here's the deal. Monaco gets an undue amount of hatred. So my one sentence rundown is not every single race has to be the same. Okay, this is the most important qualifying of the year. If you change the race of Monaco, you lose the spectacle of that Saturday. And yes, there's not as much overtaking on this track. We get to watch that 23 other Grand Prix. You see a lot of overtakes. There's strategy in this race like there is in no other race, especially this race weekend when you had drivers stopping after the red flag to change their tires and not knowing if a gap would open up and if Lando was going to take a free pit stop and try and close down. And so Carlos backed him up, and same thing with Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso. And so there's drama at Monaco you're not getting everywhere else. It's a part of history. The cars are going to get smaller in 2026. It's okay. We don't have to panic. We don't have to change Monaco. We don't have to take it off the calendar. Not every single race has to be the same track and have the same action and have the same one-stop strategies. We can have the same driver win every weekend. It's okay. It's allowed to be different, and it's great for what it is because it's different.
I absolutely agree. And like you said, there's truly no Saturday spectacle the rest of the year that matters as much as Monaco does. And for me, that makes it really, really fun to watch qualifying. And if we change it at all, that qualifying loses its importance. So I don't know. Call me old, old fashioned, but I say keep Monaco the same.
Well, I think Formula One will, because they don't really care what a bunch of 15-year-olds say on TikTok. So I think Monaco is safe at the moment. It just gets under my skin. I'll admit it. Part of me is biased because it was the first Formula One race I ever watched, and so it has a special place in my heart, and maybe that's why I get so heated about it. But Monaco is a good track, and it has its place on the Formula One calendar for a reason, even if it doesn't provide the most entertainment.
I absolutely agree. And we'll talk about it till we're blue in the face, but Monaco is a special place.
Absolutely is. If we're going to talk about something, we might as well talk about the race, because a lot of things happen and we should talk about it. First and foremost, we have got to talk about Charles Leclerc finally breaking the curse at his home track. He did it. What a win for him in Monaco. He was on the pace from FP1, just absolutely was the class of the field this weekend. Pole position on Saturday, surviving 2 starts, which can't be overlooked. Drove a very clean race to bring it home. What do you think about Charles Leclerc getting victory this weekend?
I think that was great, and it was awesome to just watch Charles do so well in his track, and he did such a great job, and to hear him on the team radio after the race, and hear about how he couldn't see in the final laps because he was crying, and it was just really special and a great performance from a great driver, and so it was just special to watch.
Yeah, it was incredible. Absolutely special to watch. Special for me because I predicted it, so that was pretty great. Love to see the predictions come true. But not only that, Red Bull were really nowhere this week, and we had Max Verstappen finishing 5th and Sergio Perez. Well, that happened. And so McLaren and Ferrari truly looked faster than Red Bull this weekend to have a double Ferrari podium. Obviously, Carlos Sainz getting a little bit lucky, getting reinstated to P3 with that red flag, but still brought it home in P3 for the podium. And those McLarens were on the back of the Ferraris all day. Oscar sure did give Charles a run for his money, and Lando Norris probably would have gotten past Carlos Sainz on any other track. So here we are once again staring down some more proof. We said Imola and Monaco might be the most important races to see if we're on for a championship battle. And it was the closest finish of the year, and then a battle without Red Bull for the whole podium. So are we looking at a championship battle here? Can we say that yet?
I mean, I think we can. I think we can say we're looking at a championship battle. Red Bull was not there all weekend long, and I think we're absolutely looking at a championship battle, especially if Sergio continues to do the things that he tends to do sometimes. Last week I was on the Sergio Perez hype train, hyping him up. I thought Sergio was going to have a great weekend. I was predicting him to be on the podium at the minimum, and that obviously did not happen by a long shot. But that's okay. You predict some correctly and you predict some not correctly. But yeah, I think at a minimum the constructors title is up for grabs now. I mean, I think the gap's only 31 points or something like that, which, if Red Bull has another weekend like that, it's neck and neck. So yeah, I think we're on for a constructors title battle and potentially a drivers championship battle as well.
I agree with you. I'm more leaning towards constructors title battle. I'll for sure say that we might be on for a constructors title battle. It's easier for me to say that, especially with the performance of Red Bull's second driver at the moment. But I don't want to write off a drivers championship battle. I said it, a couple weeks ago that Charles Leclerc's consistency was going to put him in position if those Ferrari upgrades worked and he starts winning races, that he would be right in the championship mix. And he is. And so I feel like if he has a couple more weekends like this where he outscores Max Verstappen like this, then obviously he will be in the championship mix even more than he is right now. And, I think the McLaren still seems to be a little bit faster than the Ferrari, if I had to guess, even though Ferrari finished 1-3 and McLaren finished 2-4. It seems like there is a little bit more pace in that McLaren, especially on race day. And so, I don't want to count out Lando Norris. I don't want to count out Oscar Piastri. Obviously, he was the lead McLaren this weekend. Great weekend from him. But overall, it's definitely something to think about because, everyone was saying after Miami, oh, it was one race, no big deal, don't worry about it. And we've got 2 more races of proof here that we might be on for a really interesting season.
Yeah, I think we definitely are. And, Formula One tends to work in these cycles where, you have new regulations and like 1 or 2 teams get it really, correct, really, perform really, really well dominate for the first couple of seasons. And then teams start to get closer, cars develop, drivers get better, and we have a close battle, just kind of like we did in 2021 with Red Bull and Mercedes and Max and Lewis. But I think we're starting to see that. So I'm excited for the rest of this season, and I think 2025, as of right now, appears to be wide open. So who knows what next season can bring? But it's going to be an exciting couple of years for Formula One.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but 2025 could be incredible. Three-way title fight from the beginning. Oh, man, that could be awesome. And who knows? I know it's 2024, so I just want to focus on 2024 and be thankful for this championship fight that we could have, because we were sitting before preseason testing even started and just writing off this year as another Red Bull top of the constructors, Max Verstappen top of the drivers, easy peasy. And here we are, getting blessed with 4 different race winners already. Man, it's been a great season. So I'm excited to see what happens to the rest of it.
Yeah, we're only a third of the way through, so it's crazy.
Who knows? We might even be able to be in Austin and a champion hasn't been decided yet. We've been twice and haven't had that yet. So
yeah, that'd be crazy.
Man, that would be nuts. All right, we've been skirting around this issue, but it's time we talk about it. Sergio Perez, he is 5th in the driver standings right now, which is just nuts. We said it would happen if the competition got close enough. We would see Sergio Perez start to slide down the order a little bit, and it has happened to him. But just a poor weekend overall. Knocked out in Q1 again, but it wasn't he didn't crash. He just didn't have the pace to get out of Q1, and then had a poor start. The incident, I don't think it was his fault. I think Kevin Magnussen is more at fault for that incident. You could say Sergio Perez could have moved over a little bit. I don't know. Kevin wasn't that alongside, and it's not a place you'd expect an overtake in Monaco. So I'm going to put the blame on Kevin, but still doesn't look great for Sergio to be involved in that incident. Must have had an awful start to be involved with the Haas's, who started from the pit lane. So I don't know what happened to Sergio Perez at the start there, but just a poor race weekend. What do you think about Sergio Perez's pace right now? And will Red Bull win the Constructors' Championship with him this year?
Yeah, it's just a tough scene, crashing out in lap 1. And I also agree. I don't think he is completely to blame for that incident. But at the end of the day, it did happen. Had Sergio qualified in the top 10, would he have been involved in that incident? Probably not. So, you can place some level of blame on Sergio from that perspective of, like, had he had a better holistic weekend, he probably wouldn't have been in that situation. And I think that's what Red Bull really needs from a second driver, somebody who can put an entire weekend together when they're in a good car. And I think Sergio is not the guy to do that, honestly. And we've talked about it. I definitely think there's a constructors battle open, and I cannot confidently say that Red Bull will win the constructors title with Sergio at this point in the season this year. And what's crazy to me is I'm still seeing rumors right now that Sergio is heavily favored to be re-signed by Red Bull. And I don't understand that at all. He's fifth in the driver's standings right now. I think there's I don't understand if those are, contract talks are truly happening with Sergio and Red Bull right now and they're going well. If I'm Red Bull, I don't understand why those talks would be going well. But
I go back and forth on the Sergio Perez getting re-signed thing. I lean more towards it shouldn't happen. And it's just confusing to me because it reminds me so much of the Valtteri Bottas situation. And I think now that Sergio Perez is performing like this, we're seeing how good of a second driver Valtteri Bottas was at Mercedes, because he looks incredible compared to some of the performances that Sergio Perez has put up in that Red Bull over the last 3 seasons. But whenever Red Bull started to catch up to Mercedes at the end of the regulations, Valtteri started slipping back and even started slipping into the midfield. And that's what we see from Sergio Perez as well. And instantly Mercedes was like, all right, get him out. Here's the next driver. Could be the future face of our team at some point, going to be competing, going to be providing the points that this team needs. And that has been successful for Mercedes. I think George Russell has been a better driver than Valtteri Bottas in that Mercedes, given the worst performance of the Mercedes car, all the things, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about. And so I think Red Bull should do that, should get a driver that is going to help them win the Constructors' Championship. And if they lose the Constructors' standings this year and Sergio Perez is in that seat next year, that just is unbelievable. And it's okay if they re-sign him. If he turns his performances around and they re-sign him and they think that's what's most important for them and will lead the most success, that's fine. Don't do it now. Like, why? There's so many people on the market. You have so many drivers in the Red Bull family alone who are out of contract. Just let it be for a little bit. At least let it be to the summer break. Sergio Perez is coming off his 2 worst weekends of the season, and he's had bad weekends in almost half the races this year. He's 5th in the driver's standings. Don't re-sign him right now. Make him prove himself and earn that seat and be confident that he's going to be the one for Red Bull in the future that's going to help them win the constructor standings. Re-signing him right now makes no sense to me.
I totally agree. And, I think this is also something we should discuss as well. But who do you think, if Sergio is done at Red Bull, who do you think the best option for 2025 is right now with Red Bull?
Man, I don't know if it's because this apartment is so hot, but I've been heated in this episode about some topics. It's Carlos Sainz. If he's still on the market, I don't understand why Carlos Sainz hasn't been signed to Red Bull. Yes, you want to keep Max Verstappen happy. There's already been the things behind the scenes. Max Verstappen is still going to absolutely trounce Carlos Sainz. Like, yes, I think Carlos Sainz is better than Sergio Perez. He'll take more wins off of him, maybe 5 or 6 instead of 1 or 2. But Carlos Sainz is the driver that should be in that Red Bull. And for some reason, Yuki Tsunoda hasn't been considered at all. He's performing well, but I don't think he is the kind of driver that Red Bull wants. I think he would cause some problems with Max Verstappen on the track more than Carlos Sainz would. I don't think they should put Liam Lawson riding that car. I think they've seen how that can go when you put a young driver too soon in that Red Bull that clearly drives for Max Verstappen's style, and putting him up against Max Verstappen, who is the best driver in Formula One right now, not a good combination. And that has ruined Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon from the Red Bull family. And so I think Carlos Sainz should be the obvious choice, but for some reason it's not. And so you're kind of left with Daniel Ricciardo, and I love the man. I don't know if that's the right choice either. I think he would perform better in a Red Bull than he would perform in an RB. I think we saw even from his Renault days that when he was in a better car, he performed better. And so I think he would do better, but that's not a guarantee either. So I don't really know where you go if you're Red Bull right now, which maybe is why they're leaning towards Sergio Perez. But either way, I don't think Sergio Perez is the answer either.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting to think about. And I mean, I've seen more rumors recently too of Carlos Sainz to like Williams or Audi again, after it had been rumored that he was, not going to Audi. So I don't know. I'm very confused as to what's going on, and I'm curious to find out. But I agree with you. I think Carlos Sainz is the obvious answer if you're Red Bull. But if he's not available, I guess kind of Daniel Ricciardo. But again, that probably wouldn't be a long-term option. So if you're looking for something more longer term, where do you go? I don't really know. But hopefully we'll see some of those pieces fall once we get closer to the summer break. But
I mean, it would be the worst thing in the world to throw Daniel Ricciardo in there for 2025, put Liam Lawson in the RB, and then going into the new regulations, you have the choice between DR and Liam Lawson. I mean, if Daniel performs well, you re-sign him. If Liam Lawson performs well, you could even put him up in the summer break. That I think that would be a fine option if you really don't want to go with Sergio Perez. But on a side note, Carlos Sainz to Williams would be an astronomical signing for Williams. That would be incredible. I love Logan Sargent. Glad we have an American in Formula One. That would be one heck of an upgrade. I mean, I think Carlos Sainz would probably be the new number 1 driver in that team. I think Absolutely. He is better than Alex Albon. Absolutely. And so as they're continuing to go up the grid, which I think James Vowles will have Williams doing, I think that would be an incredible signing for Williams if they can get Carlos Sainz on that team.
Yeah, if they really can land him, that's an amazing signing. If I'm Carlos, it would take a lot to convince me. James Vowles would have to work a lot of magic, but you never know.
I would have more faith in the Williams rebuild than the Audi rebuild based on where stake is right now, and Audi has been placing the foundation for the last couple years, and we haven't seen the fruits of that yet. So, should I be a Spanish F1 driver who gets paid millions of dollars to drive fast cars every year, I would rather go to Williams. Instead, I'm just some guy who talks about Formula One online, so I don't get a say in it. But Carlos, if you're listening, I would pick Williams over Audi.
That's fair. It's very interesting to think about, and it's all going to be revealed to us hopefully soon.
I'm excited for the summer break, though. Usually the summer break is like dry, especially last year when the grid stayed the same and nothing happened over the summer break. So now there's actually going to be stuff happening to quench our thirst for Formula One in the 4 weeks when there's no racing. But let's talk about positive things now. We got a little negative there with the Sergio Perez talk, but rightfully so because the performances have been quite negative. But who is your podium pusher of the weekend this time out in Monaco?
My podium pusher of the weekend is Oscar Piastri. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but Oscar was the lead McLaren. That car's, really fast. I think it has really good race pace, and Oscar was really, really close to qualifying on pole. And, he had a solid race. He had 2 good race, starts, and then he survived the restart as well. Put the pressure on Charles pretty much the entire race. And, got another podium for himself and his team when they really needed it. So I think it was a fantastic weekend from Oscar. And, he also out-qualified Lando Norris, which is something that's great for Oscar in his career. So, solid all-around performance from Oscar. He's growing on me more and more as a driver. So
Leclerc won too this weekend, so can't ask for much more for that. Man, F1 is crazy for putting that on an official graphic, but I'll take it. Yeah. Great weekend from Oscar, outperforming Lando. I think if it's not Monaco, Oscar probably wins that race, which is cool. I think he's probably the next driver to get their first win. I think it'll probably come this season. I think we've seen 2 weekends in a row now that he's out-qualified Lando Norris. Obviously, he had the grid penalty in Imola that moved him back a couple places, but his qualifying has always been one of his strengths. He out-qualified Lando Norris frequently towards the end of the year last season, and it was just the tire wear during the races that really caused him a problem. But it seems like whether it's the upgrades on the McLaren or him growing, him getting to go to tracks twice now, I don't know what it is, but it seems like he's improved in that area, and I think it's shown this year. I think he's been performing better this year, and I think McLaren have one of the strongest driver lineups on the grid, and great weekend from Oscar.
This is going to be bold, but I'm going to say it. I'm predicting Oscar Piastri, you heard it here first, right here, right now, is going to win in Singapore this year.
Well, that's quite a long ways away, so it'll be quite the throwback to this podcast. I always predicted that he was going to win at Hungary whenever I was talking, so we'll put it out there. We'll see which one happens. I'll make the official prediction that I think Oscar Piastri is going to win in Hungary. You're putting him officially down for Singapore, and we'll see which one of us ends up right.
Could be both of us.
It could be both of us, but either way, we'll shake on that virtually and see what happens. My podium pusher of the weekend, it's got to be Charles Leclerc. Like I said, class of the field all weekend long. I think it was the most important win of his career. You could say some of the wins when he was battling for a title were more important. I think he's battling for a title now. I think he's back in it. I think he's going to be riding the high from this weekend. And I just feel great for him. Just in general, it makes me happy thinking about Charles Leclerc winning in Monaco. It just puts a big smile on my face, listening to those radios, seeing him dive into the harbor. Man, just makes me happy. What a weekend from Charles Leclerc. I'm glad he won.
Me too. It was just special to watch. And, you can just tell that he loves racing for Ferrari and that, Fred Vasseur has done a great job just kind of rallying that team around his drivers. And you can tell that they love him and he loves, racing with them as well. So it's just awesome to watch. it's a really wholesome, feel good story.
Yeah, you remember that interview back in like 2017 when Sebastian Vettel was like, everyone's a Ferrari fan, even if they say they're not, they really are. I feel that it's just nice to see Ferrari doing well. I'm happy for it. If we're just making the habit of saying bold things this podcast, I don't know what we've been on. We've just been saying stuff. I'm not worried about Charles Leclerc being a number 2 driver at Ferrari next year. I think he might just stay being one with the performances of Lewis Hamilton this year and how embedded Charles is into that team. And I think how much Fred likes Charles Leclerc being their number 1. Obviously, they've known each other since Charles' junior career, and so I think they're a great pairing. But I'm not as worried as I was when the Lewis Hamilton signing was announced. When that was announced, I was like, oh man, I don't know how it's going to make Charles feel. And, he might be the number 2 driver, but I'm not really worried about that anymore.
When Ferrari makes those signings, they have more perspective than you and I do. But I mean, maybe, obviously they've seen Charles, they've seen the work that he puts in. And so for them to re-sign him to a long-term deal and then re-sign Lewis like back to back, I mean, that just shows the confidence that they have in Charles and his racing ability. And it's great to see.
If they get Adrian Newey, F1 world is gonna go crazy. But we'll see. Those have just been rumors, and they've honestly kind of cooled off a little bit recently. So we'll have to see what happens. Who is your back marker of the weekend this time out in Monaco?
My back marker of the weekend is got to be Haas. After a okay qualifying, they then were disqualified from qualifying and had to start in the pit lane, and then like a few hundred yards into the race or meters into the race, they crash with Sergio Perez and take both of their vehicles out. So that's pretty disappointing for Haas. I mean, it's just not a great weekend from them. And started out looking like maybe they had a little bit of pace, and then that kind of dipped off a little bit in qualifying, and then obviously in the race they didn't have any chance to show their pace. But pretty disappointing weekend from Haas. And another interesting tidbit is that Gene Haas also owns Stewart Haas Racing. It's a NASCAR racing team over here in the United States. They announced a couple days ago that Tony Stewart and Gene Haas are ending their relationship with NASCAR at the end of the year, and they're dissolving their NASCAR team, which is interesting. Kind of brings into question how committed is Gene to his F1 team if he's calling it quits on his NASCAR team. So will he invest more time and resources into the Haas F1 team, or will that team, I don't know, be put up for sale or something? So something interesting to think about, but not a great weekend for Haas overall.
Man, that's crazy. I don't really follow NASCAR as much as I used to, but I had seen that and just like, that's interesting. But I didn't even think about how it could affect Formula One, and it could go either way. He could be like, I have more money to invest more in Formula One now, or he could be like, getting out of racing is a good thing, and we could see Haas up for sale soon. Yeah, that's interesting to think about for sure. But tough weekend for Haas overall. Of all the races for Nico Hülkenberg to not get into Q3, of course, was Monaco, but then it didn't matter because they got disqualified. And you got to feel bad for Nico Hülkenberg because that incident was for sure not his fault, and he was like this close to making it up before the cars came back into him across the track. But yeah, they weren't going to score points anyways. And so to walk away with an extremely high repair bill is just unfortunate for them and not a great weekend overall. I think that's a great choice. My back marker of the weekend, Esteban Ocon, gotta be him. Absolutely no reason for him to send it up the inside at that corner. There are so many other places at Monaco that if you're going to attempt an overtake will not end in that kind of disaster. He disobeyed team orders to make that move and, probably wasn't going to be successful with it anyways. There's a chance for both of them to get points if he just stayed where he was and the strategy played out normally. There's been rumors of him getting a race ban. Today, the rumors were leaning towards probably not, but it still hasn't been an official no. So let me get your thoughts real quick. Does he deserve a race ban from Alpine for his actions this past weekend?
It's kind of tough to say, but I mean, if he truly just blatantly disobeyed team orders and did that on purpose with the full intention of trying to get past Pierre, I would say, yeah. I mean, it's not like Esteban has really produced a ton of results for the team over the years. He does have a race win. He got a podium here in Monaco last year, but it's not like either of those things were in play for him. And I mean, I was thinking about it earlier today, but that happened after the incident, so I don't know like where on track everything was happening, but I mean that could have potentially been under yellow flags, and if it was, then I would say a race ban. But it probably wasn't. It's probably not been communicated to him yet about the incident that happened with Sergio and the Haas cars. But
yeah, it was a little bit before the red flag came out, but still just definitely an unnecessary move. Both Alpine drivers are out of contract at the end of this year. Esteban has been performing better than Pierre this year, but got beat pretty handily by Pierre last year. The points total is rather close because even last year the Alpines weren't scoring points all that often, but I think Pierre comprehensively had the better season than Esteban last year. So I think it would be wise for Alpine to evaluate the driver lineup for next year. Should they want to get someone else in the car for the weekend, that's a possibility to view it as half punishment, half test run. I think in the end, because it's Alpine and that management is all over the place, I think nothing's going to come of it, and it's just going to be what it is, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, not a great weekend from Esteban Ocon.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, Alpine seems like kind of like their management is like the parent that says, if you do this, you're going to get grounded, and then you do it, and then your parent looks at you, and then you look back at them, and then they walk away. So I feel like that's what's going to happen with Esteban in Canada. He probably won't end up getting a race ban, but.
All right, let's recap our predictions before we get out of here. We both had a little bit of success in Monaco with some predictions. What did you predict this weekend in Monaco?
So my predictions were that Red Bull was going to score at least 35 points. That did not happen. We were not even close. We're not even in the ballpark. So yeah, I was predicting a Max win and a Sergio. I think the minimum he could have gotten was like P4 or P5 to make that happen. I think it was P4. So yeah, obviously that did not happen. My second prediction was a little bit better. Was that Aston Martin was going to score less than 5 points total. That did happen. So very happy about that. But on Saturday, pretty early into qualifying, I knew my chances of the Red Bull 35 points were out the window.
Yeah, Aston Martin bringing home 0 points this weekend. I did see something that was kind of funny, that obviously Fernando Alonso was slowing everybody up really far for Lance to get that extra pit stop, and then it was all for nothing because he got a puncture. But then Fernando Alonso thought that he was in P10 and he was going to score a point. Then they were like, yeah, good job, Fernando, P11. And he was like, what? So he thought he was going to score points, but unfortunately that did not happen. My first prediction was that there would be 2 or more red flags across free practice and qualifying, which did not happen. But when I made that prediction, I said, you guys are welcome because something's going to happen in the race now. And it did. We got a red flag in the race. So you're welcome. Just had to do the old switcheroo on that one. I sacrificed a point so we could have an interesting Monaco Grand Prix. You're welcome. My second prediction was that the gap to the lead in both the drivers and the constructors standings gets smaller. And that did happen. We are now looking at a smaller lead for Max Verstappen and Red Bull in both standings. So 1 out of 2 for both of us. Not a bad weekend of predictions, but we'll see if we can do a little better next time out in Canada.
Yeah.
All right, before we get out of here, what are your parting podium thoughts for these lovely people?
Parting podium thoughts is, man, I'm excited for the rest of the season. It's going to be a tight battle for the constructors, I think, and hopefully a tight battle for the Drivers' Championship, too. Be awesome to see. Maybe we'll see one of the 2 champions crowned in Austin in person, which I'm also really excited for. Going to Austin again this year, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'm pumped for it. My parting podium thoughts. Happy birthday, Brandon. Your birthday was yesterday. Got to celebrate you. That was awesome. Everybody in the comments, wish Brandon a happy birthday. He's awesome. We love having him on the podcast. So happy birthday. Thanks for taking the time to record this podcast. Another year older, another year wiser, another year of Formula One. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Justin. It's great. As I get wiser and older, I think you guys should all expect my predictions to become much more accurate. It's going to be great. Going to be telling the future all my predictions. So feeling very wise.
Yeah, he's going 2 for 2 in Montreal next weekend. So everybody stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Podium Pusher podcast. As always, it is such a pleasure to get to talk about Formula One with all of you lovely people. If you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, follow whatever platform you're watching on. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, wherever you listen to podcasts, and YouTube. We would love to have you join us for the rest of the season and beyond. We will see you in the next episode of this podcast. See ya.
See ya.